What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Culture FC, the weekly soccer show where we talk about all culturally significant soccer topics. That includes lifestyle, fashion, music, politics, etc., etc., etc. The only things we really don't cover are actual game time scores and any information like that. So, I'm back again, Alan, and I'm here with Louis.
What's up, everyone?
And yeah, let's get into kind of what we were talking about this week.
This week, we sat down to talk about the FIFA corruption and the corruption behind the World Cup bids for both the Russia World Cup and the Qatar World Cup. We kind of went a little bit into the issues of inhumane working conditions in Qatar, and we also talked a little bit about the cultural issues with Russia and, their governing bodies and things like that. It was a really cool episode to be able to dive into, not only the Qatar and Russia World Cups, but we also talked a little bit about past World Cups as well and how FIFA just, very sketchy organization. And so we kind of went through all of that.
Yeah, so as always, thank you for listening. If you're here listening to us, if you do like the episode and our podcast in general, please don't be afraid to go leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us out. We know that you like what we're putting out. If you have any questions, concerns, please don't be afraid also to contact us via one of the various links that you can find in the show notes, or you can email us at contact@trebleware, TREBLWEAR.com. We're always reading our inbox, so if you have any questions, concerns, topic ideas that we can cover, anything else, send us pictures, whatever it may be. We are there. And yeah, thank you for listening, and let's get into the episode. So what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode. This week we're going to be talking about the World Cup, obviously, and the corruption issues that have been pretty blatant in our eyes that have been occurring during the timeline of Russia and Qatar getting World Cups in their countries. So to kind of go through it for people that don't know the timeline and why there have been a lot of corruption charges against both of these bids, I'm going to kind of go over the different big events that have happened from when they both got their bids accepted that have kind of raised some red flags. So if we start off looking December 2nd, 2010, Russia and Qatar both win their bids. They both placed bids to win the World Cup. Russia won 2018, Qatar won 2022. Now, the sketchy part about that is that 3 weeks before that vote, FIFA actually suspended 2 executive committee members, pardon if I butcher their names, but Reynold Tamari and Amos Adamu, for they are actually caught soliciting bribes, which is sketchy from the start. That these guys were the only 2 caught that we know of. So that's the first pretty sketchy step to this. May 2nd, 2011, the former England FA chairman David Treisman actually testified in front of court. He in his deposition came out and said that 3 different people that he knew actually asked for gifts during the bidding process. So one guy asked for actually a knighthood. Another guy asked for 2.5 million euro as a part of his bribe. So kind of ridiculous. On that same day, the House of Commons published a letter from a whistleblower, pardon, I can't speak today, who works with Qatar, and he was claiming that Qatar paid 1.5 million to 3 different FIFA executives, each to secure their vote. So another sketchy situation that came up May 10th, 2011. July 17th, 2012, FIFA actually appointed an internal investigator. His name was Michael Garcia. His role was to investigate the 2018 and 2022 World Cup bids for corruption. So Michael Garcia, during his investigation, found a lot of information. He actually published a dossier that had 430 pages to it, highlighting different information, different things that he found out. FIFA did not publish his dossier. They actually published a 42-page summary of his report. And in their summary, they basically skipped some information. They didn't post everything that that Garcia found. The actual quote that FIFA came was that the potentially problematic facts and circumstances identified by the report concerning the Qatar 2020 bid were, all in all, not suited to compromise the integrity of the 2018-2022 bidding process as a whole. So they didn't really disclose the information that was out there from his investigation. The next day, Garcia actually condemned FIFA summary for it. He came out and said that numerous materially incomplete and erroneous representations of the facts were presented and that did not reflect what he actually came out with. So they hire a guy to do the investigation, and then they actually disregard everything he says. So that's not a good sign. October 28th, 2015, Sepp Blatter, former president of the FIFA, after losing the presidential election and getting suspended by FIFA, he actually comes out and tells the Russian news agency that both the votes were fixed beforehand. So Russia would actually win the 2018 vote, and the United States would win the 2022. And this is all until Michael Platini, who's another member of the FIFA organization, came to the meeting and said that was actually not going to happen, that Russia would still win the 2018, but they would actually not win that the U.S. would not win the 2022, and that would be going to Qatar. And this is following a meeting he had with the now, King of Dubai, Prince of Dubai. So this is all these are some of the highlights, some of the bigger things that came out. There's obviously a lot more that Michael found out.
And this was all prior to the trial, correct?
Yes.
So then the United States actually got involved, and the FBI they created their own investigation.
Right.
And they put several different FIFA higher-ups on trial, found and indicted them, and went through the whole process.
And the reason the FBI got involved was because the meeting that allegedly happened between Sepp Blatter and Michael Platini to extort money from FIFA happened in the U.S., and that's why FIFA got involved, just for people that don't know that.
The FBI.
Yes, the FBI got involved.
So that gives a nice little summary of all the different allegations of how, the whole situation of how both Russia and Qatar won the World Cups. And so let's kind of jump right into the bribery and the corruption, right? So it's basically since this point, it's also come to light that Qatar bribed its way to this World Cup. There have been several different reports that the Qatari royal family were giving out 1 million, I believe either $1 million bids or 1 million euro bids.
Yeah.
Either way, around that amount.
A large sum.
To each of the FIFA higher ups, right? So basically, everyone knows they have money. They're oil money. They have, they're very, very rich.
Right.
And they're the royal family. So, clearly money is not lacking. But so basically they were sending out $1 million bids and bribes to all of the different people, the higher ups at FIFA,
right?
So that they would vote. Because I guess, despite the fact that it is fixed, they have to keep up charades and they have to do a vote, right? So all these people were getting $1 million bribes just so that they can essentially fake or vote for Qatar versus the U.S. winning 2022, and this all kind of happened all at once. So the reason this investigation came out was because people, they cried foul once they saw that both of these countries won the bids, despite the fact that neither of them were necessarily prepared or should have really won it. So it didn't look too great. And so... Yeah,
it's also, there were numerous instances where the actual committee members were kind of getting caught in these weird situations. So Russia actually flew out a delegation of 5 South American voters on a private jet, and people are kind of scratching their heads like, why is this happening? And it's not uncommon for the presidents of bidding countries to have people to kind of lobby the voters.
Yeah.
President Obama had a couple. Presidents prior had way more than Obama. Obama actually had very little compared to other presidents that were bidding for the World Cup. So it's not weird. What is weird is that they're getting flown out in private jets and kind of having this special treatment. So that kind of raises some flags immediately.
Right. So this is a funny little tidbit here. Of the 22 men who voted for Russia and Qatar's World Cup bids, 7 of them have since been charged or accused by the U.S. authorities of criminal wrongdoing.
Right.
So, out of the 22 men that are the ones in charge of defining who's going to win the World Cups, 7 of them have been indicted or charged. So that's
right.
Not a good percentage.
Right.
Pretty high.
Yeah.
I'm not good at math, but I'm going to venture a guess, say that's like 40% of them.
Right. And that is a part going off of that. Garcia, when he was doing his investigation, actually found that they were being pretty elusive to who was a part of the bidding teams. So in his research, in his investigation, he couldn't even find a lot of the people that were a part of the bidding teams when
Which
he was
makes
looking
it very
for them.
sketchy.
So why are these people disappearing? And if there is nothing sketchy behind it, why is there a need to not disclose that information, right? Like if Tom was on this bidding team, where does Tom live? Find Tom. Everything is okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that alone it makes it very sketchy.
Definitely. And it's funny because it hasn't just been Qatar and Russia. A lot of news. The result of this investigation ended up uncovering past issues as well. So a lot of attention was brought by the FBI when they were doing this, that there was a $10 million deal that U.S. prosecutors say was the bribe to secure the South African World Cup in 2010.
Right.
And then what ended up happening, German legend Franz Beckenbauer was also being put under investigation for the 2006 World Cup in Germany, and all these different things keep kind of coming up because of this investigation. Right,
numerous reports came out saying that TV rights for a lot of the broadcasts were all bought off, and since 1998, it came out that the World Cup that France won, that was very largely bought off in terms of TV rights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot came out of it that really shook FIFA. I think it shook the perception of FIFA in the sense that it brought out to light a lot of what people kind of already it's more of an urban little myth, FIFA is corrupt, but nothing really had been come out.
Well, as a kid, you always people would tell you the World Cup is bought or the World Cup is this, but you're just that's just conspiracy theories. You're just talking or whatever. But then this comes to a head, and you realize that in fact, the people who get to host these things are buying it. They viewed it as this elitist kind of party where it was I can throw my money around and I can do what I want.
Right.
And so the report only really covers probably the earliest date that they start to cover is 98, and so we don't necessarily know how much more. A lot of people come out and said that the entire existence of FIFA, the entire system has always been corrupt. Corruption was at the core. It was who's going to pay the most, and ever since FIFA was created, and it's just been that's just how it is, I guess, or it was. It was just a matter of And
it's scary how, going back to that South Africa incident, it was scary because they found them talking about that through email. Their emails, they can be found out. I think it's public now. I'm not totally sure, but emails that came out, probably leaked, honestly, that came out that the Blatter was just blatantly asking via email, when is this transfer going to come through, right? So they can try to go around that in some way, but it's pretty it's blatantly there.
Right.
That if the head of the organization is just blatantly asking for money for you winning this, what didn't happen in the past where it's less trackable, right?
Right.
That's scary.
I guess there was no paper trail, for lack of a better word, back in the day, but you have these first-hand accounts of people who have come out since and talked about it, right? And so, that was kind of,
Another thing that made the Russia bid so sketchy was the whole incident with the doping issue in the Olympics, right?
Yes.
So for anyone that doesn't know, Russia was caught in a doping charge for the 2014 Olympics, the Winter Olympics in Sochi. That happened. That actually got caught. 51 of their Olympic medals were stripped away from them for doping violations that occurred during that. And that's a ridiculous number.
No, this was international news.
Right.
This was all over the place when people are where basically Russia, they got caught. They didn't try to really hide it. They were just kind of we did that. But, all of that stuff, it was state sponsored. So it wasn't just these athletes were doping themselves. It was a matter of the Russian government was influencing the athletic committee to dope their athletes.
And it wasn't just for the Olympics, it was building up to the Olympics. So 2011 to 2015, the number is over 1,000 Russian athletes were caught,
which is
doping.
insane. That's insane to me.
A crazy number.
And, it was funny because Sochi, it wasn't just the doping issues. It was that in Sochi, if you remember, I know it was, several years ago, but if you were to think back and you rewatch some of the news articles that came out, the conditions in Sochi were horrendous. Yeah. They had never finished the Olympic Village. So some of the buildings that the athletes were supposed to be living in were awful.
Yeah.
The news reporters, like that whole area for the media, completely awful. And you'd have these rundown shacks, basically, that people were living in with, and some of them didn't have running water. Right. So you expect that if you're going to put on an event such as the Olympics, that you'd be able to, so the Sochi Olympics happened after the bid was awarded to them for the World Cup. But you would think like Russia would be like, you know what, we're going to be hosting the Winter Olympics. Let's show the world how well we can put on an event.
Right.
And then turns out they fucked it up. They didn't do any of the things they needed to do.
It's funny because the Winter Olympics, the actual firm or construction company, I don't know if that's the right terminology for it, was a good friend of Stalin's.
Oh, good. Of course.
And the projections were that the cost of it was so ridiculous that they were saying that kind of money was being funneled out into his friend, who was then pocketing the money to whatever, say, split between them. I'm not completely sure on the facts there, but it was awarded to a friend. It wasn't something that was given out to the highest bidder or whoever had the best project. So when you hear all of these things come out, it makes it hard not to think that there is some type of sketchiness happening, right? Definitely. Even if they weren't caught necessarily.
No, and it's funny because you mentioned the whole state-sponsored kind of, if it was Stalin's friend, or I'm sorry, Putin's friend.
I said
Stalin friends. We meant Putin, but it's the same difference, right?
Yeah,
kind of the same thing.
Same mentality.
And so, but basically, similar thing happened in Brazil with the Brazilian construction of the World Cup and the Olympics. Brazil has a history of these state-sponsored companies who also did the same thing. And so a lot of it was, they would put the price super high on all of the different... Overinflate, being like, oh, it's going to cost us, I'm going to give a hypothetical, $300 million to build this stadium. Turns out, it would actually cost like $100 million to create it. But then they would take $200 million, split it amongst the government in Brazil.
Right.
So...
no one knows how that's split up. And
that was also another thing that went into effect in Brazil for the 2014 World Cup. And so, like we said, it's been a running theme, and I just figured it's just funny that the parallel between Russia for Sochi and Brazil for the World Cup is interesting as well.
And when you talk infrastructure, it's hard not to think of now, if we're kind of moving on to the Qatar bid, how ridiculous it seems that Qatar was able to win that. Because if you look at images of Qatar in, say, 2015 or 2014 versus what it is now, it's a desert compared to now what is it's endless skyline.
Well, to give you guys an idea, the city that the World Cup final is going to be held in 2022 did not exist the day that they were awarded the bid. And actually, I don't even think if it still exists because they're still in the process of building this massive, massive city. It's called I don't even know the name. I'm going to butcher if I even try it. But the city that the World Cup final is going to be held in 2022 doesn't exist yet.
Right.
So they're still building all of that. But the thing that shocks people the most is that the Qatari government and their inhumane working conditions for all the migrant workers.
Right.
So Qatar is not a very big country, friends. It's a very small country. So they don't really have a workforce. So what they had to do is bring in migrant workers from Nepal, India, Bangladesh, all these other countries who are looking for work, and they're bringing in these workers. Unfortunately, what would happen is these workers would show up. A lot of the people who hired them would take their passports and take them away from them, and there'd be no way for these workers to leave home if they felt injustice because they would steal their passports.
Yeah. Well, so this is actually an issue not only for slave labor of these migrant workers, but as a whole in Qatar. Apparently, the law in Qatar is that your employer determines when you can leave the country if you have a working visa, which is astonishing.
That's baffling.
Right. There's actually a soccer player, Sahir Belonis, who was actually trapped in Qatar because he was playing for a team. He had a dispute with the owner of the team over wages, and he was just because of that, the guy didn't let him leave for 9 months.
That's insane.
And he became kind of this no, I don't want to say martyr, but he became an icon for people fighting against this prince. I don't know if he's the prince now or whatever his role may be now in Qatar. Kind of people saw that he was abusing his power, and that's the government system there isn't correct. He became kind of this figure for that. Now he's gone, but him and his whole family were held basically hostage there for 9 months because of this dispute.
Right, and it's either you become a hostage or become a slave.
And so he was lucky because he's a known figure. But think of all these people who are migrating from these countries under false pretenses.
Right.
They're coming in. Oh, you're going to make so much money. You're going to do this. We're going to treat you well, blah, blah, blah. And then you get there. And at some of the numbers that the people were getting paid, it was like the migrant workers were getting paid $8 a day. Which is working under the Qatar heat, which for anyone that doesn't know, it goes up to like 120 degrees Fahrenheit.
One thing I read is that the Qatari government typically has there's a law in Qatar that doesn't allow workers to work outside in between June and I believe like the end of August. Like that's a law in place, which they completely got rid of that law while they were constructing these World Cup stadiums and the cities and all these things.
Right.
And so what's ended up happening is that since the World Cup started construction, they're the country that has had to go through the most construction since the bid was awarded. So think about it like this: the World Cup was awarded in 2010. The reason why it was awarded in 2010 and not in the typical fashion is because they needed to spend the next 18 years, 19 years building up their country.
Right.
Which is insane to me. Is how are you going to award this because it was I think one of the first times that FIFA had awarded 2 consecutive World Cups on the same day, because usually they award one at a time, and they allowed the bid processes to go through this way.
Right.
And all of a sudden they announced both Russia and Qatar, and the timing is just a little sketchy because that gave them a total of
2012 to 20.
So 2010 to 2022, so about 12 years to construct all of this stuff.
Right. But they're not constructing
just stadiums.
They're constructing cities, right?
Whole cities.
Which is unbelievable.
And so as a result, these migrant workers are dying at an insane rate.
Oh yeah, people were going if your body was lucky enough to go back to your home, to your family, they were coming back in body bags.
Yeah,
which is, it's disgusting.
You like these numbers are astounding. In 2013, the Qatari government revealed 520 workers from Bangladesh, India, and Nepal died in 2012.
Right.
So in other words, like that's all they revealed.
Right.
So for 520 people to be dying a year on average, when they're doing construction work, that's not okay.
No.
520 people a year?
There were instances where huge campfires went raging because of the heat there. People died, and then no family members weren't alerted. No one was given not that money will make up for someone's death, but no one was getting paid anything for the death of anything. Right. It's basically just like you're gone, and that's it. And there's no thanks for your contribution to
right. And so there were a lot of talks of removing the tournament from Qatar and awarding it to a more like soccer ready nation.
Right.
But no, the FIFA stuck by them and so that they had been doing all of this. Of course,
the only step back that ever came out was Sepp Blatter came out and said that Qatar probably shouldn't have been awarded the bid, but only because of the climate.
Yeah.
It wasn't even they didn't even realize how badly their people were being treated. They just came out and said, "Oh yeah, it's probably too hot." So that's probably why they shouldn't have won it.
Another big issue that we actually, we're going to move a little bit from inhumane working conditions to more logistical reasons as to why Qatar never should have been awarded this World Cup for several different reasons. The FIFA calendar runs from, August to May or August to April. August to May, I believe. And so typically the World Cup falls midway through June and ends midway through July. June and July in Qatar, if you can't have workers working during those months in Qatar, imagine someone running around on a field in the middle of the desert. And at one point, Qatar had these lofty ideas of air conditioning their stadiums with these giant floating air conditioning fans. And it was like the most...
Basically hoverboards that were going to blow air down on
and they were going to float over the stadium as if that wasn't terrifying enough. And so they were going through all these different ideas. And this wasn't something that was being discussed prior to the bid. This was stuff that was being discussed in, say, 2014 of how they weren't going to die by playing the sport. Finally, FIFA comes out and says, "Oh no, we're going to play this World Cup in November and December."
Yeah.
Which is going to throw off the FIFA calendar completely. Think about all the top leagues in the world. You got Spain, England, Italy. All of the Champions League leagues are going to have to stop playing for the World Cup.
Yeah. It just throws it throws the year before, the year after, everything into a crazy limbo, right?
It just doesn't make any sense. And so nothing came about it. And a lot of the talk was saying that, they wanted to give the 2022 World Cup to, say, the UK, because then they don't have to do any construction. They have the stadiums, they have everything working. It would be easier for them. Yeah. But nothing came about it.
No.
And so a lot of people, as a result, a lot of sponsors are boycotting the World Cup in 2022. Some of the biggest sponsors that FIFA so desperately relies on for money, a lot of them were saying, we will not participate in the 2022 World Cup.
Right.
People like Coca-Cola and Visa are two of the biggest ones, and they were, I don't know if anything's changed since, but they at one point did speak about their desire not to be sponsoring the World Cup as a result of all of those things.
It's unfortunate because I think that they still will end up being, unless we start getting, I think it's out of the news right now, but as we start getting closer to it and it starts becoming more of an issue, that if there is no improvement in the way people are being treated, because very recently, I think there was an article in 2018, like at the beginning of this year, that a reporter went back to Qatar and nothing had improved from the first time that they found out everything was happening.
Because what happened was when a lot of these inhumane working conditions were being reported, the Qatari government came out and said, "Oh, we're going to fix all this. We're going to do all these things better, and we're not going to allow these workers to die.
We're going to fix our migrant policy." I mean, the visa law. That was the thing that was going to come out. Never got fixed.
Nothing changed.
Right. So it's sad to see the current state of it. What's worse, honestly, is that FIFA hasn't taken more of a stance on it.
Right. Despite
because
all the things having,
you see all this information out there. I mean, it's known. If I can Google it and see a million different articles and pictures of these things occurring, the organization that dictates this should be stepping in.
Yeah, you would think so. But like we said,
which just makes it even worse, because it makes you think, well, okay, then there's no way that they care about integrity.
No,
then why wouldn't they take a bribe for something like this?
Yeah, of course. And so, it's funny because it's not funny. I shouldn't say that. It's just interesting because this is supposed to be a global celebration. The World Cup is supposed to be bringing all these countries together. It's supposed to be this thing where every 4 years, everybody in the country, everybody in the world gets to come together. Despite, you don't have to speak the same language. If you sit next to someone and you're watching a World Cup match, you can be connected with, let's say you're from Bangladesh and your buddy is from France. You guys can sit next to each other and and enjoy the same game and not have to speak the same language. Yeah. It's supposed to be a global celebration of the sport and of people, yet when leading up to these things, you're disregarding human life and you're disregarding normal human decency. It's not okay. No,
I know. And to kind of loop on that as in terms of this being a celebration, I was lucky enough, me and my family went to the 2010 World Cup, and to kind of prove what you're saying is that we were in Johannesburg, which was at the time considered one of the most dangerous cities in the world. And we didn't necessarily feel 100% safe, but everyone there was so comforting, and the people there that were so nice and amazing. I don't think that we would have experienced that if we hadn't been there for the World Cup, and getting to see people of different cultures, Paraguay, Argentina, Germany, all kind of together, say at the mall or say wherever it may be, representing their countries, but also being friendly to one another. Right. It's very hard to find an event where things like that happen. And to have that be overshadowed, like you're saying, is disgusting. Honestly, it's just like, I don't know. It really is sad, because it shouldn't ever get to a point of politics. I think that football should be football, and it should be what it is. And it seems like it's being overshadowed just by how disturbing everything has been.
The sport isn't taking center stage, right? And that's what you don't want. Another example of people coming together is during the 2014 World Cup in Brazil, a lot of people traveled to Brazil from the neighboring countries, like Venezuela, Colombia, and all that, and they didn't necessarily have a place to stay. And it was super funny that on the beaches of Rio, people were just sleeping at night. Yeah. They were putting tents together, the Paraguayans next to the Colombians, and all these people were just sleeping together on a beach in Rio. I don't know if it was because they couldn't afford it. It mustn't have been that. It must have just been like the camaraderie that was going on.
Yeah, I think a lot of they had the stuff on the beach, the showing the games.
Yeah,
so they would just party all day on the beach, and
they were just like, you know what, we'll just camp out together. And it was really
yeah.
cool because like all of these countries just coming together and doing that.
Yeah.
The worst part is that I think about is, you know, during the World Cup happening in Brazil, it actually sparked a lot of public outcry. There was a lot of public protests for the World Cup because they were spending so much money on infrastructure for the World Cup, but not for the actual country.
Yeah.
And so...
I mean, they spent a ridiculous sum on a stadium built in the middle of the Amazon,
which today is a bus parking lot. I kid you not.
They play a couple games a year there.
1 or 2 games a year, and for the rest of the year they use it to park public transit buses.
Oh my god!
I kid you not.
It's unbelievable.
It was insane, and for the Brazil World Cup, it was the most stadiums ever used for a World Cup. They were like, you know what, we're gonna build 12 stadiums.
Yeah.
Like, we don't
Brazil's
need 12
so big,
stadiums.
right? Brazil's so big that we can see the enthusiasm behind it, but if there's no need after the World Cup,
why are you building?
Don't do it.
It's like the one. It was like that stadium they built in China for the 2008 World.
It seems like it happens in
Olympics.
every world. I mean, the South Africa one,
Soccer City?
Soccer City, amazing stadium, but now no one plays there. Even the closest team there is the Chiefs. Kaiser City Chiefs, they have their own stadium that's closer to their demographic and their fans, so it makes no sense for anyone to go to Soccer City. It's literally just they call it a nest, but it probably really is just a nest now for birds.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because there was all this outcry in Brazil, right? But then the World Cup happens, and everyone forgets about all the bullshit, and everyone's loving it. And I guess that's just the power of the World Cup is that so much shit happens leading up to it with every single country that doesn't necessarily.
Well, that's my worry is that I think that even though there's the outcry and the sponsors are saying now that they're going to do that, I think it's more of a saving face because the money at the end of it is what rules.
Right.
And I think that they're just going to stick to it.
And we're sort of seeing that right now with Russia as well. I mean, to give you an idea, on Sunday, when we were researching for today's episode, I found this article saying that there was a whistleblower of this guy who said that it was reported this on Sunday, January 14th, I believe, that the Russian athletic people are planning on doping its athletes for the World Cup. This is a guy who came out and said it. He's a whistleblower for them. He said it on Sunday, and it was just so ironic to me that we were planning this podcast, and then I do research, and the guy yesterday says, we're going to be doping our athletes for the World Cup. I mean,
there's even controversy over how easy Russia's group stage.
They're saying it's some sketchy stuff. And I mean, some of the other issues that people bring up with Russia, since we talked about people trying to remove Qatar from hosting the World Cup, a lot of people were hoping for Russia to be removed as well. Basically, a lot of it hinging on the regime there, the governmental regime, but also the abundant racism that happens. Yeah. There are teams in Russia who throw bananas at their own players.
Yeah. I mean, CSKA Moscow, like a week ago, posted on their Twitter a video of it was 3 Brazilian players, all of them dark skinned, and they were like, this is what happens when you have chocolate in the sun. You know what I'm saying? Ridiculously, like, that statement is absurd in the sense that whoever did it thought it was super normal.
And I'm sure that the people in Russia thought it was normal too.
Yeah, they didn't. It was more global outcry than within Russia.
And a lot of players like Samuel Eto'o, who is regarded as one of the best African players to ever play the game of football, got abused in Russia. Yeah, it's tough there. And he played there, and they're just abusing him. But the other issue is also insane hooliganism. If you watch, if you remember watching, I think we commented this on one of the podcasts prior. If you watch any of the Euros that happened in France in 2016, it was absurd what the Russian hooligans
they have a pretty bad. I mean, they have a pretty bad culture of hooliganism. They just go everywhere and just destroy everything.
Man, I will never forget the image of it was the Russian hooligans and I think the English hooligans fighting at a cafe in France, like this beautiful setting where you would think like movies get filmed and shit, and it's just like a bunch of barbaric people throwing chairs.
But they don't even go just for the other group of people. They just go. They target kids, women.
They don't
care. They don't really care. And it's I wasn't gonna go to Russia in the first place, but I would 100%. Because they would gang up on people like 6 dudes just kicking the shit out of one person.
Oh man,
I would never want to get
kicked in the head, and he was already unconscious. And they're like no regard for human life.
Oh my god. It's sad. But okay, to kind of stop bashing on them, but maybe still bashing on them, I kind of want to propose the question of: do you think either of these countries deserve to win the World Cup, their World Cup bids?
So for me, I think that from a football standpoint, I can see why Russia was given the World Cup. I don't believe they never hosted a World Cup, I don't believe. And, they've had a decent amount of footballing history. They have a decently strong league. They have a lot of their league was on the up with a lot of teams.
I mean, they compete normally in the Champions League. Like they don't ever go that far, but their home games are tough for your other European teams to go and play.
And so teams like Zenit and teams like CSK, they're always present in Champions League, and I can see why, to an extent, they were awarded. Of course, there's always these issues of inhumane treatment and government regulations, and I'm not going to go into any of the politics about Russia interfering with the U.S. election, things like that, but it's always present, right? But I think from a strictly footballing standpoint, it makes sense. Right. Explore Russia. It's not a place that anyone has really gone to yet, but that that people care.
Yeah.
And so, they have a fan. Like, I remember people talk about them in the 80s, like their 80s, the Soviet Union team in the 80s was really, really good.
Yeah.
I believe they won a European championship.
Yeah.
So it's like they do have some history.
I think their current jersey is inspired by them. And
so, they do have some history.
Yeah.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they would have been awarded. Of course, circumstances aside, we know that they bribed and got their way there, but even if in a perfect world, I think it would make sense to have them host a World Cup.
Yeah. And now
Qatar, not at all.
Yeah.
To give you an idea, like the country's so small. Sure, they may love football, they may love the everything, but I don't understand the point of putting it in a country where they don't really. There's no footballing history. There's nothing to really bring people there. Like, what kind of historical significance has Qatar or any of those countries ever had to global soccer? I don't want to sound like, bashing them, but it's just the truth is, like, they have shown almost zero really, like, interest in the global sport.
Yeah, no, it seems like it's just they're using the World Cup the same way they use any of their world's tallest buildings or crazy resort hotels that they have. They're just using it as a way to attract people into the country, make money off of it, and have Qatar look like this paradise. You know what I mean?
Right.
This oasis in the desert, which it isn't. I mean, there are a lot of bad things that happen there, and I agree. I don't think Qatar, 100%. I would not have granted Qatar a World Cup. Sure. It may be if they had a plan for it being in 5 cities that were established already and they weren't going to do this and that. But their climate alone doesn't allow for it. I think that I understand that the sport is global and you have to bring it everywhere in the world, but there is a structure to it, right?
But to what extent, though?
Right, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that you wouldn't play a game on the North Pole.
That's
right?
True.
You wouldn't start building. It's not only because it's so cold, but it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So if you're going to have a game now that's in one of the hottest places on earth, sure, you might be trying to bring soccer there, but it doesn't make any fucking sense.
The World Cup has been the World Cup is going to hit its 100th year in about 12 years. Yet it's always been played in the summer, I believe. I could be wrong, but it's always played during the same months, or at least for the past several decades. It's always been the same time. It's always been easy.
Recent history.
The FIFA calendar accommodates it perfectly. It makes perfect sense. But the amount of changes that they had to do just to accommodate Qatar as a host nation is absurd to me. It just doesn't make any sense. It's going to ruin. Sure, it's a global sport, but it's going to ruin the global game for about 2 years, we said, because it's going to throw everything off.
Yeah, I mean, these for players that are used to playing at the highest level, you're not going to see them playing at the highest level because they're going to be playing in conditions that are unplayable.
Yep.
Teams there can't even practice until it's like 9 p.m.
Yep.
So
that would be if it was in the summer, I believe.
Yeah, in the summer, right in the summer. But I wonder what's the temperature there now. It's probably still so.
Probably still pretty hot. But the issue is how do you give your players time off?
Right.
Typically they have, even in a World Cup year, players have a couple of weeks at the end of their league before training for the World Cup starts.
Yeah.
How do you give them time off when now all of a sudden the calendar gets completely thrown off?
Right. You're throwing off. You're not just throwing off the World Cup, you're throwing off world football and every single league in the world off for 2 to 3 years.
Yep.
I mean, these guys do need their rest. They're used to playing a lot, but they're not used to playing that many emotionally draining, not even considering physically draining, emotionally draining games that, say you make it past your group stage, and that, I mean, for a lot of countries that is huge and that can be emotionally draining. You say you get kicked out and then in a few weeks you have to go play your Champions League quarterfinal, semifinal, round of 16. That stuff adds up for players, right? And it may be exciting for us fans. It may be, but
It could be something different, but
it doesn't. If you know everything that's going on behind the scenes, it doesn't make it exciting.
No. I will say, let's play devil's advocate here. And so, I don't know if Qatar has a league or if it's very popular, but some people who are listening to this might say, well, hold on a second. When the U.S. got awarded the 94 World Cup, they didn't even have a league when they were awarded it. And so, as a result, the MLS was created. And in a country that had been very much known as not a footballing country at all. And so, in the 70s, they had a lot of big-name players here, but, it took the U.S. being awarded a World Cup to be the catalyst for what today is one of the fastest-growing leagues in the world, being the MLS. And it was able to capture the minds of the U.S. soccer fan by being awarded this World Cup. So
I see what you're saying, but my argument to that would be the U.S. may have not had a league, but the U.S. had a population that could potentially play the sport afterwards, right? Qatar is, as a whole country, 2.5 million people, which if you think about it,
that's smaller than New York City.
it's a ridiculously small number. 90% of that population lives in Doha, which is, I think, the capital of Qatar, or whatever it may be. Then consider the number of people there that actually want to play the sport. I don't know the number, but it's probably a fraction. I'm going to assume that not all 90% or whatever of the 2.5 million people that live in Qatar want to play the sport of soccer. So to me, it doesn't seem like there is going to be any real positive repercussion for Qatar other than financials that would promote the sport there.
So what someone might argue is that it is a Qatar World Cup, but it's also seen better as like a Middle Eastern World Cup. So you have all of those countries who are passionate about soccer. There are some of the Arabian countries or the Middle Eastern countries who are very passionate about soccer. So I can see that, and FIFA's global outreach strategy of, hosting these World Cups in different areas, I can respect that to an extent, correct? In 2002, when Japan and Korea hosted it, it was a massive success, And so I think it's interesting that they are trying to do it. It just seems that...
Do you think, though, that there will be and I don't mean this as a general term, but a lot of the Middle Eastern countries do not get along with each other, right? There is a lot of tension. Do you think that this helps unite them and kind of fester a love for the more of a sport? Does it not matter? Does it play a role?
You know what? Naively, I want to say that the World Cup brings people together. So, you hear the story about how the British and the Germans stopped fighting in World War II to play a match on Christmas Eve. They played soccer together, and they were killing each other 24 hours prior and 24 hours after. But for 24 hours, they had a truce and played soccer. I'd like to think that the sport has power, and it's one of the reasons why I love it so much. Is you would think that they could bring the Middle Eastern countries together at least for a month.
Right, but even with people knowing all the atrocities that have been happening there,
I'm gonna be honest. I'll be naive and say I hope it does.
I hope so too, but it's hard for me, so I can't imagine what it is for the people there that are closer to it and seeing it day in, day out.
So I just think that, with all the global outreach, I think it's great. I think it's awesome to try and expand the game to another place. But none of these other countries that they expanded the game to did it cause so much of a stir. There weren't really, they didn't change the calendar for the Japan and Korea World Cup. They didn't change the calendar necessarily for the South African World Cup. They kept it during the summer months. They kept things nice and clean and orderly, and it wasn't an issue.
If I'm being honest, my biggest problem is not with Russia and it's not with Qatar, it's with FIFA for allowing this to still continue. Because there's always in life going to be the person or an establishment or organizations that are going to try to take shortcuts and do bad things. That bad isn't going to leave the world necessarily, but if there's someone that is allowing you to do that, if there's someone that can prevent you from doing that and they're not taking the necessary steps to stop that, that's where I kind of draw the line and kind of am disgusted with FIFA, because all of these things are present and they're known and they're well documented, but they're not doing anything about it.
Well, to your point, it's like this goes so far against what soccer should represent. You know, it's supposed to be a game for the people. If you think about typically the people who play soccer, it's more of the working class, like we spoke about a couple episodes ago. It's more for the general public to enjoy. But if the general public is dying to build these stadiums and cities,
what's the
point?
And
the fact that you have to change everything and basically ruin about 2 years of the global game just because you want to have a tournament, I don't agree with it.
No.
And FIFA shouldn't allow it. And you're right. You know, it's not really. I mean, Qatar's gonna do what it's got to do to get its World Cup, but FIFA being so easily bribed is really where the issue is, and they should be the ones upholding these values.
100%. And that's kind of transitioning a little bit to current FIFA, right? Sepp Blatter, all of these so-called corrupt key figures of FIFA were taken out. So then there's this positive feeling for FIFA. The new president comes in, Gianni Infantino, with this message of everyone thinks we're corrupt. We're going to change that. We're going to change the image of FIFA to become something positive and bring a positive light to it. But yet, nothing's happened. I mean, nothing's changed.
He was elected in 2015, 2016. It wasn't recent that Infantino became the president of FIFA, and nothing's really changed. No. Nothing's been coming out. Of course, I'm sure he's busy planning the World Cup for the summer. I'm sure he's doing that. But at the end of the day, you know,
he was at a conference at Qatar the end of the year. I mean, talking positively about it, and the president of FIFA is there, seeing the things happen.
But they're just doubling down on it.
And he just won't say anything against it. Right. That to me is the biggest flaw of FIFA, and it immediately tells me this guy's just like the other shit bag that was leading the ship before. A lot
of people are saying that he's of the same camp. He's of the same kind of person as Sepp. You know, hopefully he changes our opinion.
Why do they all look like evil people too?
They just look like villains. If you guys have a minute, go online and search up the people who run FIFA and tell me they don't look like a James Bond villain.
Yeah, I always think of Austin Powers. They just all look like villains out of Austin Powers. Like, why?
No, for real. Like you like imagine in your head like what a villain of a secret organization would look like, and then you Google the people who run FIFA.
50 plus years of age. Picture that man, and that's probably
what they are. That is literally what they are.
So it's funny because they're we're talking about like all money laundering and all that. It actually came out that they have a 37 member board that works for FIFA. Each one of them was making $250,000 per year salary, right? Which, if you're thinking, oh, FIFA is huge, maybe they deserve that. Okay. But then KPMG came out, which is one of the big accounting firms, global accounting firms, came out and said that for the size of FIFA and for what they do, their actual responsibilities per person, they should be making more than $81,000
each.
Which, when you look at it,
it's a big discrepancy from $250,000.
And that's not considering the amount of money that they get on a daily basis for daily needs. It's like $500 that they get to spend per day. Plus, they get travel money. They all travel first class. They all do this and that. They get the finest hotels everywhere they go. So when you look at all of that, these guys are probably making way more than $250,000 per year for an organization that shouldn't be doing that. The level of compensation is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So then you're thinking, well, what has the president of FIFA been doing so differently from the last guy and the guy before that and the guy before that?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like there's been much change. It's kind of just that initial like, oh, we're going to be good. And then
let it blow over in the news media and kind of go from there.
Let it happen.
This is random, but I'm going to throw it in there. FIFA came out with their own movie. They produced and created their own movie about their creation, and it was meant to be this essentially it was a propaganda piece. It was a whole movie. It was a 2-hour movie, whatever it was, fully produced and all this, and it was supposed to show them in a great light. It came around the same time that all these accusations were coming out. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was voted like the worst movie ever made.
Yeah.
And so I've actually never watched it.
I've never watched it either.
And so I want to extend this to our listeners. I want you to let us know. If you have watched it, please comment on this podcast or send us an email or just let us know if you've watched it because I want to know how god-awful it was.
Yeah. I didn't watch it because every single person that I knew that watched it and even just the online buzz of it was so negative that I was just it's like a evil masterminds videotape to brainwash people. That's what it was. To tell them, oh, FIFA is so amazing.
I have this weird thing that I think it was on Netflix too.
Yeah,
I think
it might have
Netflix
been.
put it on, and like I'm being serious. If you are listening to this, I want to know if you've watched it, and I want to know how bad it was.
Yeah.
Like, please send us an email. Please comment. Do something. Get in touch with us. I want to know. And maybe we can talk about it in a future episode. We'll put our conversation on with you potentially, and we can put on next episode. But I just find it's so egotistical, and it's an amazing move. Not gonna lie. If your shit's under fire, you're getting attacked from every angle. Most people would come out and be like, "We're gonna change. We're gonna do things different." FIFA goes, "We're gonna make a movie talking about how great we are."
It's so evil, guy. It's such a villain move. Like, it's such a villain move. It's unbelievable, honestly.
It's just so funny to me that one of the world's most evil organization runs the world's greatest sporting event. And I guess it comes to that question of, like, can you have good without evil, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
But it's like, it's just baffling. It's crazy to me to think that something that brings so many people together is run by the most corrupt and evil organization on the planet.
Yeah. FIFA.
We're rebranding them. That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean, let us know. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
We might have to watch that movie. Do live reactions.
Yeah,
that'd be funny.
Do an Instagram live
Holy
of us
shit.
watching it.
But all right, I think that.
Yeah, I think
I will say, final remarks though. All things considered, we all love world soccer. We love the World Cup, and we hope that Russia goes down without a hitch. We hope that it.
Yeah, no, I know. I don't want any more bad things to happen. You never want that. It's just sad that our love for it sometimes overshadows the
things
bad
going on.
things happening.
A lot of people turn a blind eye because of how much we love football as a world. You know?
Right.
And so I'm excited for the World Cup. I get goosebumps thinking about the World Cup.
Yeah, I'm pumped.
It's man, the group stages. You have 2 matches a day for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's just the best thing ever. I can't wait.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I do nothing for a month in June.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. I can't wait. No, but yeah, folks, that's it. Glad you liked today. Tune in for next week. So that's it, guys. That's the episode. We hope you enjoyed it. We really enjoyed being able to dive deep into this topic and highlighting to you some of the issues that we've found with the World Cup bids for Russia and Qatar. We hope that this not only was informative, but also kind of eye-opening for you. You have a little bit more information on what's going on in the world of football.
Yeah, it was just really cool to be able to dive into it. Since it is a World Cup year, it's very interesting to talk about, some of the underlying issues. But yeah, don't forget to give us that 5-star review on iTunes or your any podcast app that you use, Google Play or whatever it is, and share with your friends. Let them know about this awesome podcast you're listening to, and we really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.